get absorbed in, and you are Sonic.
What's up, everybody? I'm Taylor Olmstead, and I want to welcome you back to No Repeat, a podcast where we pick 3 songs every week with no repeats and no do-overs to create a perfect playlist for every occasion life throws at you. Joining me are my co-hosts, Tyler Reed.
Ba-da-dee-ba, bang-da-bang, diggy-diggy.
And Sean Evans.
Soap snail.
Tyler, what was our challenge this week?
All right, folks, we got an extra special episode for you today. So, my Aunt Beth listens to this show, and she gave me some suggestions for challenges to do. So this week, we're challenged to find the perfect song for corrupting the minds of young children, sent in by Auntie Beth. Thanks, Auntie Beth. If you want to submit your own challenges, you can send a DM to us at NoRepeatPod on Instagram or Twitter, or you can email us at norepeatpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much.
Okay, so...
Just for the record, it's the minds of children, not young children. That changes the parameters.
The minds of children.
Of
No,
what the
you're right.
challenge is. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Clerical, but still... We have to take a moment and acknowledge that, once again...
Oh, no.
I've lost twice, okay? I have a running count, I know.
Sean has double picked. He tried to pick a song that was already on the playlist, so he has to talk about his song first this week, as is tradition. But before we get into that, let's talk about our methods and thoughts. So for me, when I saw Corrupting the Minds of Children, I was trying to think back to my early days of discovering rock and roll and general pop culture that wasn't intended for children, right? Like adult culture. And I was thinking about, like, what were the albums that I was discovering at that time? What were the things that seemed transgressive or risky or dangerous, or like stuff that maybe my parents wouldn't be too excited to see in my collection or whatever? And so I built up this playlist, and I was kind of going through some stuff, and then, you know, it like kept circling around a theme until I finally like got to the root of it, and I realized that it had to be a punk song, because I felt like I discovered punk at a young age, like maybe 12 or 13, and it really just like opened the musical world for me. And from there, it was just a matter of like trying to trace back, like, what was my first punk band and what song of theirs really mattered to me. And so I picked something that I think is a good representation of that band, but is also something that even to this day could be a good entry point for a young person who is just starting to experience the, like, quote unquote counterculture, or like popular culture that isn't a part of the mainstream. But what about you guys? What did you do?
So I feel like I had to refer to my own history, kind of like how you did, Taylor. And so, of course, that means roughly around the early 2000s, right? And I think during that time, there was a lot of really angry music that was coming out. You know, like Slipknot, Drowning Pool, Alien Ant Farm, Disturbed, Godsmack, Seether. You know, there's not a shortage of bands with just dudes being really mad. You know, for God only knows. Someone needs to give those boys a hug. And so, and I, like, of course, those are kind of things that kind of like transformed me in a way. Because I think a lot of time, growing up, my parents mostly listened to like classic rock, which isn't really that, you know, like it doesn't really present itself. It's too aggressive or too anything, because, you know, I feel like over time, the tempo and styles have really increased, you know, only exponentially, right? And so, you know, like, I could have drawn from that. Like, that was kind of like my first inspiration, was like, oh, I'll just pick, you know, I'll pick some like hard rock song. And I was like, but do I actually enjoy that? And I wanted to think about something that like something that kind of like actually changed me in like a way, or something that like kind of is a little bit more like interesting. Cause I mean, like, I think a great example is, I feel like people hear like, well, this might not be relevant right now, but growing up, Circa Survive was a band that lots of my friends like listened to. And Anthony Green's like vocal style is so unique and different that for a lot of people, it's very hard to listen to, I think, very early on. And so it's kind of like changing like kind of like your perception of music. And so I feel like, you kind of have to want to get into something like that. Like there has to be like a quality that you enjoy about the music, and then kind of like that kind of starts like kind of the cascade of finding new and other things kind of related to that. So that's kind of like an example of like a barrier you kind of have to break down. So that's kind of what I was looking for.
Well, I'll admit first off that I double picked. This was really actually a hard challenge for me. Sometimes I know what I'm going to pick, and sometimes I'm like, oh, well, when you put it that way, like, I'm actually kind of invested in this. But I didn't really want to pick, like, an obvious song. I didn't really want to pick a song that was in the decade, since I was the last to pick of everybody else. Because I think that there's not so much... I think when we think about songs that corrupt the youth, it always seems to fall in like two categories, and one of them is like hip hop, and the other one is like rock and roll, classic rock, probably more so in particular. Like if it maintained over the course of history to where children are now hearing it, it's probably because it's classic rock or hip hop. And I really wanted to pick a hip hop song. Ultimately, I didn't, and I think it was just because I was like stumbling on finding the theme that I wanted to go at. Because I think there's like one thing that's like, if the challenge is, let me read it because I have to be technical here. Songs for corrupting the minds of children. It's like, it's not really so much that you're like inciting rebellion. It's like corrupting a thought process. So I really wanted to kind of find a song that was like, it kind of gets in your head. Like it kind of causes an event in your life where you now question different things, right? You're not just so like, it's not just encouraging rebellion, but it's like the theme itself changes the way that you think about stuff. And I think that a lot of like modern hip hop and hip hop in general is really good about doing that. Same way with rap music. Folk has a particularly pretty good bend on it as well. Which is weird to kind of say that in the same vein that like there's like folk and hip hop might have something in common, which is rebellion, but they kind of do. So I wasn't necessarily looking for like an anger angle. I mean, I'm going to use that some other time for a band name. Anger Angle.
Anger Angle? I'm into that.
I think I wanted to find something that was like psychologically turning, or like a concept that was psychologically turning. So that's kind of what I went for when I picked my song this week.
Well, Sean, since you did double pick, it only makes sense that you go first. What was your song this week?
Okay, so I already picked, I'm going to talk about my song that I already picked, and then we'll move on very quickly from it. But I already picked I'm Designer, which stinks because I kind of really wanted to have that one for this one, and I totally forgot. But this week, the song that I did choose, which I equally love as much, is Deftones' Goon Squad. Of like kind of, if you've heard the podcast and you heard me talking about I'm Designer and you talk about like psychological shifts and different things like that, the reason that I picked Goon Squad is it's kind of twofold, right? The first one is because it's the correct use of the term from a political science standpoint of goon. The other part of it is it comes at from a psychological bend of like cool, and I think that's a very interesting rebellion term. But we'll talk about that later. So, like, I'm going to get up on a soapbox for a second and talk about this. A lot of times today, certain people use the word thug, okay? That is extremely out of context. There is a definition of what a thug is. A thug is somebody who uses violence towards a religious capacity, and not in, like, a terrorism way. I mean, like, if your preacher doesn't like somebody and you go out and beat them up because he tells you to, you are a thug. That is the political and agreed on definition of what that is. Gooning is different. Gooning is somebody who is basically like an operator. Oh, I wouldn't say an operator because operators have independence. I should say somebody who basically goes and commits violent acts by the will of somebody else. That is a goon. Okay, there's a huge difference there. Both terms, I feel like, get tossed around in pop culture a little bit. I think sports uses gooning a lot because gooning seems to be kind of mindless when it's actually not. And thuggery is used for anybody who you don't like, and those two are different. They're not correct terms. So Just want to spell that out because I think that that's an important distinction to make. Okay, so let's get to the song. Why do I like it? Because it takes a psychological angle about cool in particular. Because I feel like a lot of songs about rebellion don't really talk about what rebellion actually looks like and how rebellion can take kind of a passive form. When we talk about like the concept of cool, which I think Taylor might be even more familiar with his like media studies education than I would be. But I can talk about cool in like social terms of political power, right? Of like cool being like the society's perceived it kind of is this like weird limbo state of like being accepted by a group, maybe even like by and large as accepted, but also being like hip, which almost has to have a rebellion factor to it. And when you think about the way that cool is today and how cool has kind of always operated within our lifetimes, at least, cool has operated on this weird bounds of like gooning, like corporate cool, right? Like the idea of having soap snail is because you can have the market product that will make you like the coolest thing ever. You know, like when you talk about brand names, when we talk about this, when we talk about that. So in a sense, when we talk about like what does rebellion look like, songs that corrupt the mind, songs that will drive you crazy for the rest of your life, not really songs, but concepts are that you'll always kind of be taught, you'll always be kind of in tension with this idea of wanting to appeal to other people. Maybe you don't, but that's a rejection of the appeal. So it's like either be free or be forced to be free. That's your choice, which is a paradox. But at the same time, once you understand that, if you're into it, you can kind of go for it. You can just continue to maintain. But if you're not, then you kind of are always caught in this, for me at least, in this like weird zone of thinking if you believe in a moral right, where does it go? Like, what does it look like? It's like, it seems to be a perpetual questioning. Maybe that's existential crisis. Maybe it's not. Your choice. But that's why I wanted to pick this song, because I think it kind of explores that a little bit. Like, if you're into doing something, is cool designed? Is cool like a good turn that you want to be into? If you reject it, are you just accepting that cool has a power over you? Like, there's a lot that's going on here that's not so much just like, you know, beat on the brat or something like that. It's something that's like self-referential, which I think is one thing that we're taught well as millennials and probably Generation Z, that like everything is level 1 analysis and all about you. So there you go.
I really like the political bent you took with this, because I've always kind of felt like Deftones had a lot to say, but I was never too excited about the package that message was delivered in. Right. I was reading a little bit about them when you put this pick in, and some people have apparently referred to them as the Radiohead of metal, which I think is a pretty apt comparison. Like they're experimental, but still commercial in the same way that Radiohead is. And they kind of embody the exact thing that you're talking about of like, they're avant-garde, but not too avant-garde, right?
Yeah.
Because they still need to sell records. And when you read these lyrics and hearing you talk about it, I totally get how this could be eye-opening for you, because I think you came to this point a lot earlier in life than Tyler and I did. This idea of like cool as a manufactured concept and how we navigate that as beings in an entertainment economy, or in an information economy, I guess I should probably say.
Was it anti-cool or was it post-cool that I feel like Sean...
It was post-cool.
Post-cool was like the Vice article or whatever that Sean was obsessed with and shared with us at the time. But I do think there's a lot of merit to that. And I think the thing about the like post-cool hot take article, if I'll try and find it and put it in the show notes, is that it's really building on...
I think it's actually from Adbusters.
Oh, you're right. It was Adbusters, which really dates it. Wow. But it falls into this lineage of... like, this all kind of starts in academia and then moves its way into the journalistic hot take space in the way that a lot of stuff does. But the main academic text that I think of with this is The Conquest of Cool, Business Culture, Counterculture, and the Rise of Hip Consumerism by Thomas Frank, which was published in 1998 and looks at the 60s counterculture movement and how it is one of the first youth movements in general. And because of that, it is the first youth movement to be fully co-opted commercially and turn into like a prepackaged thing. So that by the time you get to 1970, you have prefabricated peace and love pop groups wearing tie-dye t-shirts that are being pumped out by the dozen, and it just becomes like the economy of hippie symbols without any of the radical politics. And his argument is essentially that from that movement forward, this happens like every 5 to 10 years with every hip movement. And so I think it's interesting to have Deftones as kind of like outsider weirdo rock guys talking about that in this song and repeating this phrase, designed special for you by me, because it is, but it isn't. Like, it's designed for a special kind of edgy rock kid, you know, that knows who Deftones are, but it's still, you know, on a medium-sized record label. And I mean, they have a platinum selling album in White Pony. Like, they weren't totally unsuccessful. They weren't like a hippie commune or anything. So yeah, like the contradictions of it, I think they are fully aware of, and it's important for us to be aware of. But it's definitely a concept that like you really have to struggle with at a young age, because otherwise you just accuse everything you like of selling out. And that's not exactly a productive discourse either.
I feel like this is a band, like when you're growing up, that you get past the classic rock, and then you like, maybe you like, I mean, again, I have to always remember that the youth that I had is not the youth that everyone has, because I'm like, oh, and then you listen to like Nickelback, but I'm like, ain't nobody listening to Nickelback. No youth are listening to that band in 2020. But, you know, you move on to some contemporary alternative, like you listen to like Imagine. I don't know, rock is dead in the mainstream, it doesn't matter. But, or you like your parents give you something to listen to. And I feel like the Deftones are like that next step, because I feel like it plays at like a level that's just like, it really, they're like considered like a post-hardcore, right? Like kind of like a hard rock sort of, like, you know, so it's never really fully metal, never fully like too rough. So like I feel like as a kid listening to it, you can kind of get into it pretty easy. Like there's a little bit like unclean vocals in it, you know, but it's kind of mixed with some clean. So it's like, it's not completely unbearable. You know, it's not Bleed by Meshuggah, right? Like it's in terms of intensity, it's pretty palatable. You know, like your parents will probably let you listen to it because they're not overtly saying any bad words on the tin, you know? So I mean, this is actually a pretty cool song, like, all things considered. I'm kind of into it, because I've never really given Deftones a try. But I feel like also the intro to this is pretty long, but also very deceptive. I think that's also fun for, like, a corruption standpoint, because you're like, oh, don't worry, guys, listen to this song. Look how nice it sounds. It sounds great. Their parents are like, perfect. What a great song for my child to listen to. And then immediately after that, it's like, like, yeah. Anyway, it's pretty good. I mean, I actually really enjoy it, and I feel like I need to give Deftones another listen, because I feel like after listening to like some real bad butt rock this week, I'm like, I want something that's a little bit smarter, a little more sophisticated. This sounds right up my alley. Definitely a good pick. It's definitely not like an overt. This is definitely like a song that's like lyrically based, but I kind of was also like I feel like you definitely picked it for the lyrics, but I think also compositionally, I think it also fits his challenge really well.
Yeah, I think they were on the front of my mind just because we had talked about them in the last episode.
Yeah,
and they just released a new album as well pretty recently. I think within the past couple weeks or so. And they kind of are like, it's hard to say that I really love their music, right? Because it's kind of simple. I feel like the lyrics are like not necessarily like complicated too. Like you're not going to like listen to Run the Jewels and then listen to Deftones and say like, wow, the lyrics are there. Like it's not, but you know, like their formula is really good. They're able to put it together in like a really good way and make like melodic metal, which I think is something that I really crave. Like there's no reason that you has to have like this like Dragon Force, like, you know, Van Halen, like you don't need to have that. You can do like the 8-string chugging kind of like and still make like a love song, right? Deftones are able to do that consistently over time and still have like some shrillness and some hardness, but it's manageable. Like, it surprises me sometimes without even like bringing into the conversation. And when I talk to people about what kind of music do you like, Deftones seems to come up, and it's not really like, oh, you're really into metal. Like, no, it's just like that one song that I listened to was stuck in my head. You know, I think you got to give them credit for the melodies.
Deftones is maybe like the bridge between the new metal of Linkin Park and Limp Bizkit and like actual metal.
Yeah, I feel like that's a. I think they did have a DJ for a little bit.
They still do, technically.
Okay.
He also plays
They
keyboards, but he is a DJ. Well, I suppose in terms of like genre, Tyler's pick is probably the closest to what we just heard. So Tyler, why don't you go next?
All right, this week I chose The New Black by Every Time I Die. Lads, I've been waiting to get this song on this playlist since the beginning. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I distinctly remember this song was on Guitar Hero 2, and I played it a lot. And, well, mostly because it was just a really fun song to play on guitar. But for me, I remember like listening to it and being really conflicted with like the vocal delivery. And, like, being, like, unsure of it. Because I feel like, you know, you're listening to pop, you're listening to some classic rock. The vocal deliveries are usually very skill-based, very, not like, the intensity quite isn't there. Because I think at some point, we were, as a culture, we were able to harness the intensity of less performance-based vocals. And so what's really great is I think when you can find that and kind of discover that kind of sound and like really appreciate it, I think something kind of like unlocks in your brain, right? Because I distinctly remember kids listening to like The Devil Wears Prada, like or like I don't even need to go on. That says enough. If you don't know who they are, kids, look it up. But kind of when we were growing up, there was a really like a focus on like a mix of like clean and dirty vocals, right? Especially like unclean vocals, like as like a focus, lots of like screamed vocals. And so what I think that Every Time I Die does, and what this song specifically does, it makes the mixture of clean and unclean very palatable. It makes it very seductive, because I think ideally, like kind of when I think about corruption, I'm kind of like, it's kind of opening you up to new ideas and kind of making you think about how a song can make you feel, what it can bring out in you. And so like I feel like this song kind of gives you the clean vocals to like really kind of make it easy to listen to, and then the dirty vocals just bring out an intensity that you feel like you don't get in like lots of like older music or in the pop spectrum. And it's just so like intense and powerful, and I think it's really just really appealing. And so that kind of definitely led me on a path to kind of appreciating different kinds of vocal styles, right? But I mean, on top of that, the song is already great. The guitars are very like Southern rock inspired. It's real simple, but boy, is it like, it's loud. It's bombastic. It's not too complicated. It's got enough going on, but like that guitar, the main guitar riff, incredible, And so I think there's enough like sort of like traditional like song compositions, and there's a bridge, chorus, there's a guitar solo, there's a little breakdown in there. Like it just has a lot of really sexy parts to it that just makes it really easy to kind of draw you into the idea of kind of getting into unclean vocals, right? And I mean lyrically also the song I didn't really pick it for the lyrics, but I think also it also kind of deals with a sort of rebellion as well. So
first of all, Grip It and Rip It. Love the can opening at the intro of this song. This is notoriously not a style of music that I'm a huge fan of. I didn't love it then. I'm not a huge fan of it now. But I do think you're right that Every Time I Die, it has a really good way of using unclean vocals as part of a song structure in a productive way. In the same way that I enjoy some of the early Between the Buried and Me stuff, or like La Dispute, right? Like somewhere where you're bringing in the screamed vocals to either emphasize a point or to have a contrasting character or do something emotionally dissonant from the clean vocals. Like, it's serving a thematic purpose in the song, which I think is crucial because a lot of this period, people would just put screaming into songs because it was the thing to do and not because it was interesting or pushing rock anywhere. And I think this song does a really good job of capitalizing on that trend, but doing it in a way that is like pushing a point. I'm also thoroughly impressed with the individual instrumentation on this. All of the performances are excellent, and you can tell that because it's super well mixed, which was also not common in this period. A lot of this, like screamo rock, all you could hear was drums and the vocals. And so getting, you know, that double pedal bass drum and the bass guitar and both electric guitars and the vocals clearly and crisply really sets this apart in hindsight, right? Like, I feel like if you listen to this compared to like Chiodos, it's like a fidelity night and day difference. You can just tell. And even if the guys in Chiodos played better, it just wouldn't sound as good because you can't hear them. And so I think you really get a chance to hear how talented all of these guys are. The solos and drum fills are great. The only challenge I have with it is the breakdown. I just don't feel like it was necessary. I think it kind of detracts from the power of the bridge, but it's just a style I don't like, so that's probably why I don't like it.
I'm glad this song finally made it on there. I like the message of commit to being you. There's nothing more rebellious than committing to being you, probably. I also think this is a really good example of showing how a bass and a drums can really make the same tempo feel like at least 12 different tempos. Snare drum placement and driving bass lines are key to making your music move. They are keys. This song does a great job of doing that. I love the vocal performance. I think that the guitar being like all crunchy and this song being gross is definitely makes this song cool because it has texture. I don't know. Kids might not like that, but I like texture. I think it's cool.
Everybody loves a good texture. Don't get it twisted.
I don't know where I almost need to go on a mission now and find out where the drink opening thing comes from, because like they've done it. I know the Used have done it. I have personally done it. I think it's really good. I think it's just a great way to like cinematographize. That's a word.
It is not. As a film student, I can confirm it is not.
Cinematographize. What is it? What's the correct term there? I get it. Cinematographize sounds like you're taking a picture of a cinnamon roll and putting yourself in it.
Cinematize.
Dramatize is probably what you're looking for.
Dramatize.
Yeah, okay, all right. It's a great way to dramatize musically the opening of a beer can. And Grip It and Rip It is just, what can I say? We probably say it at least 5 times an episode on this one, but...
I cut them all out, don't worry.
Oh, okay. Well, Grip It and Rip It. I feel like I'm legally obligated to like this song too because I have a Pabst Blue Ribbon Extra. That just feels very the new black right now.
Rapid fire review of the PBR Extra.
If PBR did malt liquor.
I'm a pass on that.
All right.
Well, that brings us to my song, and this week I chose I'm So Bored with the USA by The Clash. So like I said, I traced back my roots to figure out what was my first punk record, and I'm pretty sure it was the self-titled Clash album, their first album. If not, it was definitely like a Clash greatest hits, but I know it was the Clash. And of the early Clash songs that I can remember, this one stands out, and I think it fits the challenge well, because it was clearly a moment for me of just realizing like Tyler said, you don't need to have this pristine vocal performance. Like at the time, the only other rock music that I was really listening to was U2, the Beatles, Pink Floyd, and Coldplay. And so you have all of these like notoriously talented vocalists, and then I pick up The Clash, and Joe Strummer is like gravelly and kind of off pitch, and he's yelling, and then the chorus is like a slightly out of tune gang chorus where the whole band is just screaming the words. But the thing that really got me about this song, I think, was that, and I guess I had probably heard Green Day by this point, but like the fact that The Clash could be so political, but in a way that wasn't like it's aggressive in its own way, but it's very like nihilistic, right? The chorus is, I'm so bored with the USA, but what can I do? And it's definitely like an Englishman's look at what was happening in the US at the time, right? Joe Strummer talks about Cambodia and the US giving money to dictators all over the world, which we were doing a lot then and still do a lot of now. Never mind the Stars and Stripes, let's print the Watergate tapes. Like, this is 1977. Watergate is still fresh in the cultural imaginary. And I just find it so interesting that he's basically like listing off the sins of this country that he doesn't live in, but that directly affects his life. And his conclusion with all of it is, I'm just so bored with this. Like, I'm over it. I'm done. I wish I could not have to care about this anymore. And I found that to be like such a liberating message as a kid, because, you know, we definitely grew up in the like rock and roll against Bush era. Like, I remember those compilations coming out and being a big deal. And there were all of these like, that was the era of like the charity compilation. Like, I had a John Lennon covers compilation raising money for Darfur and all of this kind of stuff. And it's not that those things are bad, but they were just so earnest, right? And I think I was just so excited to hear rock and roll that was just kind of like, yeah, man, like, this just sucks, but like, I'm a poor kid from London and what can I do about it? And that was how I felt at the time. And it was really like mind opening to be like, oh, this isn't a new feeling, and expressing your powerlessness is still a political act.
I mean, it's a Clash song. I don't know how you argue with it not being on here.
They are the only band that ever mattered.
Yeah. I think they were like already like over their fame by the time the Beatles came around.
Other way around.
I was being sarcastic.
You can't do that joke anymore, Sean. We've done this before.
Oh my god, I can't believe that I just got you there.
I was checking a text. I wasn't paying full attention. Continue.
Oh, no.
Whatever.
Oh,
be in the moment. Not everything has to be an immediate reward. Little rewards child jumping in between little tasks. God.
Talk about the song.
Concentrate. No, I think it's a good song. I think it's a great choice. I think that there's probably somebody at every point in their life gets to this point where they're like, ugh, this place. Regardless of what it is. Maybe they love it their whole lives. I don't know. I haven't met anybody like that, but if you do, that's good on you too, you know? You probably felt this about other things. I don't know. If you like everything, you're just like you're like living your best yes life, you know? Say yes to it. Be open to the experience. I haven't had that. So, good song. Have the Ramones been on here before? This is our first Ramones song?
I'm not falling for it this time.
No, I don't know if they are or not. That's an honest question. I think we have had the Ramones on here before.
We've had the Ramones. We haven't had the Clash or the Sex Pistols yet.
Okay. I'm not trying to trap you into something.
Oh, he was. He was ready.
I'm not trying to trap you into anything. I already made Tyler look at a map before we even got on this show. And I caught you on your phone. Pay attention. Be in the now, millennial.
Sean's just mad because we got him. We got him once. Now he's out for blood. He says, "All right, if I'm punished, you're all punished."
I'm gonna be at this level. I'm bringing everyone down.
Yeah. Anyway, so what I think is really kind of fun about like really like early like punk and like proto-punk is that it, by like today's standards, is like grandpa music, right? Like like you listen to like Good Charlotte, or you're listening to like Simple Plan, and you know those are kind of like more like faster, heavier. You know, they're a little more influenced by like metal, and like pop punk has kind of gone in a different direction, kind of accelerated quite a bit. It's funny how quickly it's gone off. Even like hardcore like early hardcore, like you listen to like Nervous Breakdown, you're like, oh, this is a song for kiddies. But you know, but no, like, but if this is like your first time like hearing anything at this like tempo, this speed, like if you only ever listen to like classical music, you're like, oh, this stuff's popping off. So I think it's really interesting in that way. I'm just infinitely interested in how sounds have progressed in different ways. And I feel like the Clash's are really good, really punk is so interesting to me, because I almost distinctly remember asking my friend Julian, I was like, can I have some like hardcore punk? And I didn't know what that meant. And so that ended up being, you know, like Minor Threat, who's the Holiday in Cambodia,
Dead Kennedys, you know, stuff like that. Like even just like a few years later, they really like cranked it up. But that being said, about the song itself, I think this is great. You know, definitely think the lyrical content, a young kid like reading the liner notes is like reading this, and they're not gonna have any idea what any of this means. But since it's the 21st century, they're probably gonna like Google it, Wikipedia, jump on the Googler and find out like all this stuff, and they're probably gonna get a real quick education on how we aren't so great all the time. So I think it applies to the idea of corruption in that way. But I also think that you're like listening to Misty Mountain Hop, and then you listen to I'm So Bored with the USA. You're like, oh, this is very different. This is very different perspective. But no, this is sick. I think this is also a great thing that like you can like a parent can put in the car when you're driving, and that's kind of like, it's like close enough. You're like, I want to listen to something that I want to listen to. I'm tired of listening to the wheels on a bus go round and round or whatever. It's like, they're not gonna know what's happening. It's fine.
All right, now it's time for notable B-sides. These are songs that were so close to getting on the playlist but didn't quite do it. I'm Designer by Queens of the Stone Age. I have another one. Nobody wants to hear another Queens of the Stone Age song, but I need to put it on there.
I do.
Anybody got notable B-sides?
I sure do. When I was initially, like Sean, looking at hip-hop, I looked at Just off of the new Run the Jewels record, All Right by Kendrick Lamar, and New Slaves by Kanye West. And then I was like, no, I need to go back to my roots. And so I mentioned it on our First Cuts episode, but Black Cadillacs by Modest Mouse, the song that my parents told me I couldn't listen to because it had the F words a bunch of times in it. And then I had another Clash B-side, Know Your Rights, off of Combat Rock, which is such a distinctive song and such a like in-your-face takedown of government and capitalism. But it's mostly kind of spoken word, and I felt like that maybe wouldn't fit on the playlist. And then Tyler mentioned it earlier, but Rise Above by Black Flag, because I will never forget the first time I heard Black Flag. Talk about an eye-opening experience.
Nervous Breakdown. I chose the Gallows version because I think it's pretty sick. I think it's a fun cover of that song. Holiday in Cambodia, because boy, that vocal delivery is real weird the first 20 times you hear it.
Talk about another band that'll open your eyes to some historical atrocities.
Yes.
The Dead Kennedys.
Voodoo by Godsmack. In the End by Linkin Park. Boy, I almost... You want to get open to a world of real difficult stuff, along with heavy metal influence and rapping. That is a real cocktail for getting influenced into other things. Ball Diddy Ball by Kid Rock, Dragula by Rob Zombie, Killing the Name by Rage Against the Machine, a CD that I bought with my mom when I went to FYE, and I didn't understand what the machine was until I put the CD on in the car, and I was like, oh, that means the government.
Wow, more Queens of the Stone Age, probably insert that here. I wanted to put a new song off of Run the Jewels' new album, but it wasn't really working for me. I was looking for a very particular kind of corruption. I thought about putting Stray from the Path on here again, but man, that band is controversial as hell. Just a little bit too much for this show, which is really weird to say, but that band is very controversial. I would have to do a lot of explaining if I ever picked a song from that band, but there were some interesting ones on there. The reason I'd pick that is because of the theme itself. Like, it's really like, yep, that band has some songs. I think oh man, what's that little 2-piece band that oh, you know
Royal Blood.
No, well,
Death from Above, 1979.
that one too.
White Stripes.
Nope. Also that, man, I'm into a lot of these things. And they had like a hit that came out about like 2012, 2011. Middle Class Rut. There we go. Yeah, probably some Middle Class Rut way to get on here.
Oh yeah, USA by Middle Class Rut would be a good fit for this challenge.
They're pretty good. Yeah. I had some ideas and abilities on here when I was looking down the hip hop route. Some Sage Francis was going to come on here for a little bit. Some Danger Doom. I just never really settled on something that I really liked in there because I didn't have a lot of time to look through their collections and familiarize myself again with what was going on there. But that said, I'm happy with what I picked because it's about time the Deftones got on here, and I really love them. So,
Tyler, if people want tips on how to perfect their scream vocals, where can they get those from you?
Go to a professional. Please don't come to me. I cannot help you. But you can find my design and illustration work at rudepets.club. And as always, you can find me on the socials as Rudepets Club on Instagram and Twitter.
Sean, if people need more angry, heavy rock, hard rock from the 2000s, where can they get that from you?
oh, you can find me on Instagram at TellySean.
And if you want to talk about UK punk from the 70s and 80s with me, you can tweet at me at TC Olmstead. And we will be back here next week with another episode of No Repeat.